I'm Vance Bastion here with my co-host S.A. Baz Collins for this week's Written on the Edge, Season 10, Episode 10. We'll be talking with Wayne Scott about his memoir, The Maps They Gave Us. So let's get to know our guest. Wayne Scott's writing has appeared in The Sun, Poets and Writers, the Psychotherapy Networker, Huffington Post, and the Oregonian, among others. His New York Times essay, Two Open Marriages in One Small Room, was adapted for the Modern Love podcast and read by Edoardo Ballerini. Then Dutchified for Modern Love, the television series in 2022. Some of his more notable tweets are included in Tolstoy Together, 85 Days of War and Peace. He was a Tin House Fellow in 2019. He is a writer, psychotherapist, and teacher in Portland, Oregon. Wayne, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. So, you went from therapy to writing a memoir. How much of this was self-therapy?
Oh, all of it. I mean, therapy and writing have in common that they're both narrative, right?
Okay.
They're both story. Really, what are you doing when you're talking to your therapist, but you are telling a story and you're telling a story to a compassionate listener, right? And there's
Hmm.
something about that. I mean, I'll speak about therapy first. There's something about that experience of speaking to a compassionate listener that expands the narrative, that makes it fuller, makes it more rounded, more nuanced. It becomes the story that heals. And I think the same thing happens with memoir writing. We are writing to an imagined, compassionate reader, that we want to sort of understand a situation in its fullest. So absolutely, it is just another avenue of therapy, and I did not have to bill my insurance.
Well said.
Yeah.
So, your memoir is titled The Maps They Gave Us. If I were to see it like on a table at a book event or a Pride event or something, and I were to look at that cover and say, "What is this about?" What would be your elevator pitch? How would you draw me in?
Yeah, the elevator pitch. Well, let me just say quickly, this won't be the shortest elevator pitch in the world, but the maps they gave us, that little phrase comes from a very famous series of love sonnets that the lesbian poet Adrienne Rich wrote, I think in the 70s, in her book, The Dream of a Common Language. They were called the 21 Love Poems, and it was about falling in love with a woman during a time that was hostile to that, right?
Okay.
And one of the things she wrote in one of these poems was, whatever we do together is pure invention. The maps they gave us were out of date by years. And so that's where I
Wow.
kind of took the title, The Maps They Gave Us, because anybody who enters into marriage, but especially heterosexual marriage, right? You are entering into a script that was established in ancient times,
Hmm.
and sometimes you don't even realize the weight of what you are buying into, inheriting, and being inducted into, until it overtakes you and you realize you kind of have lost yourself.
Okay.
So the story is a story of another. I don't love this word, but this is the word they use. It's a mixed orientation marriage. So it's a marriage between someone who is straight and
Hmm.
someone who is not. So I'm the
Okay.
not in our relationship. I when we got together, I identified as bisexual, and then over the years, queer became the word that was more kind of inclusive, but it didn't exist when I was kind of coming of age and that kind of thing. So we were a
Hmm.
mixed orientation marriage. We kind of bought into a heteronormative container, right? Because we had a very devoted partnership, but it kind of required me to lop off a whole part of myself, right? And you don't know what you don't know when you are in your 20s. And we were very much
So
in
true.
we were very much in love, right? And so I signed up, and quite willingly and enthusiastically. And then over the years, that became the container didn't fit anymore. It didn't. It was too difficult to pretend that this other part of me did not exist. And
Hmm.
I kind of felt like I lost that part of me. I lost myself, and that led to kind of a bit of a crisis in our marriage. We broke up, and so actually for the lion's share of the book, the characters, myself and my spouse, think we're getting divorced.
Oh wow.
We're in this incredibly painful liminal period. Anybody who's ever broken up, especially in a marriage where you're already legally joined to each other and you have kids,
Hmm.
will know how like unbearable it is to be thinking you're divorcing, and it takes a long time, right? Like just you're sifting through all of the, um,
What's
do
the
we really
stages
want to
of
do this?
grief?
Yes. Oh my gosh. And a weird kind of grief too, because there's always this like weird little lurking hope. But could we somehow make this work? Could we get back
Right,
together?
right. Yeah.
And you don't know. There's nobody who like brings a tablet down from the mountain and says, "Yeah, your marriage won't work. You guys need to get divorced." Like you wish that somebody else would just decide, say, "No, yeah, this marriage isn't supposed to work." But you have to decide yourself. It's like this one ultimate form of adulting. You have to figure out, can I stay in this forever or not? We happened to go to a professional who was both a couples counselor and a divorce mediator.
Okay.
And so one of the things, so there are two things she did with us. Early on, she said, when she thought we were divorcing, we thought we were divorcing, she said, in order to do this, to be able to move forward with separating, you need to have a story, a common story that you both agree on about how you got together and and what this transition means. And it's got to be compassionate. It's got to have elements of both of your narrative. It can't be a polarized where he's the villain or she's the villain.
Hmm.
It has to be something that's palatable for your children, your family, your friends, and yada yada. That was the challenge. You have to find a common story. And because I'm a writer, as um, that got me thinking about what makes a good story? What makes a good marriage? Well, what makes a good story? And to think about marriage as a kind of story. What was our story? And that was kind of part of what um, inspired the memoir. And then at a certain point, like I think we'd been working with this therapist for 9 months or so. She looked at us and she said, you guys actually aren't making very much progress towards getting divorced. In fact, you seem like you're pretty devoted to each other. Have you ever considered having an open marriage? And it was really like at that moment, it was as if the earth suddenly stopped and we all lurched forward in shock because I didn't think a reputable professional was allowed to say that.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, this was 2008. And so
Okay.
it really, at that point in my socialization, it was the idea of open marriage was a very, especially for heterosexual couples, was a very fringe idea.
Hmm.
There
It
was
belonged to the
no there
swingers,
was no
right?
credibility to it at all. I'm a social worker, so I had trained as a therapist, and it was a bad word. You didn't talk about, when you're working with couples, you didn't talk about non-monogamy as an option. The goal was to make monogamy work.
Okay.
um but definitely in like that time period, 2008, things were definitely shifting and changing. And so to have a professional say, hey, because we were both in shock when she suggested that. And I think one of us said, can you really make something like that work? And she said, you know what, of course you can. You can make anything you want work. You get to tell the story of your marriage. You get to revise the script. You don't have to take um, any story of marriage that someone else gives you and make it your own. You actually author your own story. So
How did you move forward from there?
very fitfully, very fitfully, it was when we decided to see if we could make a non-monogamous arrangement work. We committed to it as a time-limited experiment. It made both of us really uneasy. We didn't have any, you don't have any role models really.
No.
Um, we didn't really feel like we had any role models. But so we decided to commit to it as an experiment, and it brings up a lot of stuff for people. It doesn't have the same amount of social support. There's some embarrassment. You like worry about what will people think of us. Brings up all kinds of like hidden issues you didn't know you had, right?
Hmm.
Um, but ultimately it ended up being a workable experiment. And we've been together 32 years.
Nice.
So so part of like deciding to write the memoir is I felt like, I've got like, you know, we, I don't know. I'm at a certain age where I feel like I can offer this to the world and I have a certain amount of credibility, that people might listen. It's not just it's really not a little time limited experiment anymore. It is our lives.
Right. Well, I mean, the fact that you're living it alone gives you credibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
So,
I mean, I also, to be completely fair, I live in Portland, Oregon. I live on the West Coast. It's extraordinarily socially progressive. environment. And so, it wasn't long after we decided to commit to this experiment that we discovered many other couples in all shapes and sizes and arrangements who were doing similar things. And so you start to you find your people. You find your
Hmm.
people. Um, the other, if I can just say, the other kind of meaning of the maps they gave us. Obviously, they're the inherited maps that we get from a heteronormative,
Right.
mononormative world, right? But there are other maps we get as queer and feminist people.
Hmm.
And so as I was kind of going down this path, kind of miserable for a lot of it, worried that I was going to get divorced, that the experiment wouldn't work, I had access to my own ancestors, writers, Audre Lorde, Adrienne Rich, James Baldwin, Walt Whitman, D.H. Lawrence, E.M. Forster, like all of these writers that I realized they had already gone this way. They had already blazed a trail. If only I could find them and read about it. So there are other maps. We just have to know how to find them,
Right.
right? We have to know how to find our queer and feminist ancestors. We are not the first people that came up with the idea of a non-monogamous, long-term non-monogamous arrangement. Other people have like looked at it and talked about it. Like if you think about the Bloomsbury book at the turn of the last century, right? They were
Hmm.
all thinking about ways we can be true to our whole being, the straight, gay, lesbian parts of ourselves within long-term arrangements with other
Right.
people.
Yeah, I know I talked to a couple of authors now who are in similar open statuses. One I think was a fully contained throuple, but it was three.
Yeah.
Another one was a house that was built more as a family, less as a sexual thing. Um, but she had the benefit of living just outside of Boston, where the city protected that
Hmm.
concept.
Right.
So little elements of acceptance across the country are giving me hope. Back to your novel, did you write it chronologically? Like, did you tell the story beginning to end, or did you break it into, okay, this section deals with this concept of it, this section deals with this concept of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate that question. The way I structured it is there's sort of an opening prologue where you see this very distraught couple with little school-age children going to see a divorce mediator, and they're just miserable. And that's where they get the task from the mediator. You need to have a common story.
Mhm.
And then it opens up to the first 5 years of the couple's lives, um, and some of the forces, the history of that time that shaped them. So for me, um, I came of age. I was in college in the 80s and the late 80s. So I was in this interesting transitional generation. When I started to have sex, there was no safe sex. The
Right.
concept didn't exist. And so we were, when I was in my um, early 20s is when we suddenly had to shift. We had to change. Like and now there was safe sex, and so we had to sort of like do this cognitive shift, and it was, nobody remembers, but it's quite hard. It was like, there was this long period where many young men in that era, we knew that there was this dangerous disease out there, but somehow we didn't think it really applied to us. Maybe it applied to
Right.
men in other cities, or older men, or men who had different types of lifestyles and stuff like that. So even though we knew the danger was out there, we didn't take it seriously.
Hmm.
Um, so so anyway, that was one of the big formative pieces of what made me who I was at that era as a bisexual man. And then when I met my spouse, which is covered in the same time period, um, she was the first person that sort of said, if we're going to be together, if we're going to be close and intimate, we need to be monogamous. And at that time, and the AIDS pandemic was so awful. It's so dark and such an awful period. There was no cure at that time. There was no management of the disease or anything.
Right.
If you got it, you thought you were going to die.
Right.
Um, and it felt very safe that she offered that to me. Like I felt like she was giving me a kind of mooring that would help me get through this really scary time.
Hmm.
Um, and so that was a lot of how we got together. The second part of the book is called Avalanche, and it's when it all came crashing down on our heads. That's about 14 years into our marriage. We had three school-age children, and I just kind of reached my breaking point with feeling like I had buried myself,
Hmm.
like someone caught in an avalanche. We had the crisis. We separated lived. That's when we started seeing the divorce mediator. Um, and then the last section is called The Mountain. And it's basically about how we rebuilt with this therapist's help. We had at that point kind of decided that we were actually trying to build a non-monogamous arrangement, a creative new arrangement that was going to fit us. Um, and we were able to do that with her help. So it just kind of like describes, yeah. And the last scene is like the little family going on a hike. We have a lot of these kinds of hikes out in the Pacific Northwest, going on a hike up to Mount Hood.
Nice. When you say little family, does that include the the love you found outside of the core marriage?
Not in that particular scene,
Okay.
but definitely, one of the big parts of the that last section is that effort to integrate the
Hmm.
other people that we were seeing outside of the marriage. So I started to see a guy who interestingly was in a almost parallel arrangement.
Interesting.
So he was a heterosexually married bisexual man with school-age children, the same age as my children. They were actually reading the same volume of Harry Potter that we were reading. Because this is the other really significant thing that was going on in this period, 2008, is the Harry Potter books were coming out. So the
Yep.
whole world was consumed with what was going to happen to Harry.
Yep.
So all throughout my memoir, the present day moments of my memoir are marked by what book in Harry Potter we're in. so,
Nice.
so yeah, so that was it was a kind of big deal for me to bring this guy home, and for my spouse to meet him
Hmm.
and to know that we could all kind of coexist, that we were all simpatico. We were gonna support each other's arrangements. He had no interest in leaving his spouse. He liked being with his spouse, as just like in the same way that I treasured being with my spouse.
Hmm.
But we just also wanted fuller, more authentic lives.
Right. So I know no good book exists without some sort of deep struggle for the main characters, whether that's internal or external. Did you have, based on what I know of relationships like this, did you encounter things like jealousy or, yeah, loss, and did they make it into the memoir?
Oh my gosh, yes. Um, it was it really was the period of transitioning was messy and often at many points unbearable. And I really it became really clear to me why people don't do non-monogamous arrangements, because when you're first transitioning, got no role model, you're
Hmm.
jumping into this chasm. It really feels like you're jumping into a chasm. Um, and it's really frightening. Like every time she would go out on a date, I would wonder if it was the end of our relationship, which
Oh,
is a horrible thing to kind of sit with. I mean, it gets easier. I mean, it gets extraordinarily easier as time goes by. You get so used to it, becomes another part of your just regular routine. But in the early stages, you feel like you're breaking some rule,
well, right. I
that's
mean,
written in a golden book, and that you're just going to go to hell.
well, yeah, I mean, these monolithic societal structures that are impressed upon us from day one.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
what you're doing while you've discovered others who do this, it's never shown to us.
exactly. And the for me, one of the benefits of doing this for me was you really do have to grapple with levels of your own psyche, levels of self-awareness that I would not have had to confront if I didn't do this. I mean, I grew up as the misfit kid. I grew up as the kid whose parents recognized early on, okay, what's wrong with him? Why does he cry inconsolably when we sign him up for Little League? Why does he refuse to play with other boys?
Hmm.
Why does he want a doll so badly? Like,
Hmm.
so the red flags were going off all around me growing up. And I absorbed that. I absorbed the shame, my father's shame about having a son who didn't do the acceptable things that little boys are supposed to do,
Right.
right? And that went really, really deep for me. And so when my spouse started to date real heterosexual men, it brought up a lot of stuff in me about feeling inadequate, feeling less than, feeling
Right.
like like I had grown up feeling like had never been an acceptable issue. There had always been something wrong with me, and that came back really, really powerfully for me. Um, when you're in a monogamous marriage and your partner does something that's threatening to you that way, you tell them to stop, right? You
Hmm.
tell them, don't do this thing that's threatening to me, stop it. We need to be just devoted to each other. But in a non-monogamous arrangement, you can't manage that feeling by trying to control them. You have to actually figure out, where does this feeling come from in me? You know?
Right.
Um, there was this I don't know, can I just tell a real quick story about about dealing with this like unbearable feeling? There was this um she one of the early times that she went out on a date, she was seeing this guy. She really liked him. He was a good guy. I met him and I thought he was a great guy, but it was still unbearable when she would go out with him. And I hadn't yet figured out, how do you manage the time when your spouse is out on a date? So the way I managed it is I would sit at the window and stare at the spot where she parked her car, waiting for her
Oh,
car to come back.
oh
Yeah, that's
no.
really effective. It's really effective. If you want to make yourself utterly miserable, just stare at the empty space where your wife's car used to be while she's out on a date with a more acceptable issue guy. So I was
Mm-mm.
miserable, churning inside, couldn't get to sleep, but I also didn't want her to see me. I didn't want her to come home seeing me in that state. I wanted to be a cooler person than I was. So I ended up crawling into bed with one of my sons and couldn't sleep. And I'm looking at this little guy sleeping beside me. And I'm looking at him with a father's love, right? And I'm
Hmm.
thinking about what a misfit I was growing up, what a disappointment I was to my own father. But I'm also looking at my son, and I had this sudden dawn, um, looking at him like he's perfect. There's nothing, it's never been about gender. Is he more of a boy or more of a girl, or is he an acceptable issue? Like, he is an absolutely perfect little boy, as all three of my children were all perfect in the way that they had been formed.
Hmm.
And it had never been about gender conformity. And then I had this other little like shift in my own consciousness, like, oh, wait a minute, if he's perfect in my eyes, then I actually must have been perfect too. I just lost track of it, right? I just lost track of that, that sense of deep acceptance of who you are in whatever form you come into the world.
What a powerfully healing moment.
Yeah, yeah, it was really healing for all that like crappy internalized homophobia that you like just gets absorbed into your soul and like, makes you feel bad about yourself your whole life.
Right. Is there anything about the maps they gave us that we didn't think to ask that you want people to know?
There are a lot of books. I mean, there's an incredible number of books coming out these days about marriage and about
Hmm.
divorce, and also there's a lot of stuff coming out about non-monogamous arrangements.
Right.
And so
I've
it's a really,
actually I've
yeah,
actually seen one bookstore that has a section now called ethical non-monogamy.
yeah, yeah. So it's out there, and so it's a kind of exciting thing. There's a couple interesting things about it, though. Especially the memoirs, most of the memoirs are authored by women.
Hmm.
Um, And in fact, a lot of those were my role models as I was thinking about how to structure my memoir. So there aren't a lot of men contributing to the conversation, and there definitely aren't a lot of queer or bisexual men contributing to the conversation.
Right.
Um, so I think for a lot of um, definitely one aspect of the memoir is about bisexual erasure. The
Hmm.
ways in which we move through the world and become invisible if we happen to be partnered with someone of the opposite sex.
Right.
That it's hard to hold on to that part of yourself. People just see that people think in a binary way, so they see that you look like you are heterosexual now, that you've given up that other part of yourself, and
Right, but you
yeah, the
always feel
weight of
like
it.
you're passing.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah,
this
and I can,
passing mentality that you're floating through life, taking all of the advantages, but the disadvantage is the price you're inwardly paying.
exactly, exactly, and and Pat, and I will. I think, to be honest, too, as a boy who grew up being bullied, a lot, really, all throughout middle school and high school were just miserable, miserable times for me, in terms of just not feeling safe in the world, and so passing was nice for a while. passing was like, I was like, this, I could get used to this. I can, people don't target the man in the sweatpants and the minivan with the 3 little kids in the back seat does not get targeted with what I had been targeted before. So like there is a seductive part of it, that of having that privilege. But man, it definitely comes at a cost,
Yeah.
Well, I also think it's probably a cost that's paid more by bisexual men because it's the stigma of the inner homophobia that in society at large that plays more harshly on the man in those situations, which is, you can go up on YouTube and put in, the whole, why women don't date bisexual men.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's a huge rabbit hole to fall down.
Yeah,
And,
I
I
bet.
myself am married to a bisexual man. So, going through and understanding the way that they had to navigate their lives, and really finding out how to find some truth to themselves without having to pay that price, but still be wholly, that whole identity
Yeah,
and not feel like you're shortchanging any part of it in
right.
particular. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's great that you found that way to do that. I think it also contributes to why, I was thinking while you were talking about this, I was thinking of the movie Beginners with Christopher Plummer and Ewan McGregor, where he was married all his life. His wife passes away and then he comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of queer men, bisexual men, I would assume predominantly, they've hid that part of them because society is more harsh on that aspect of our queer spectrum
Yeah,
Hmm.
than
yeah,
any other. And I think that that's, it contributes to male suicide rates, it contributes to alcoholism, it contributes to drug use, it contributes to violence. There's so many things that are perpetuated from this one thing that if we just addressed and we
right,
all looked at it and we
right.
all solved it, so
Right.
much
Mhm.
would go away.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I mean, when I was coming of age, like as a late teenager, that's kind of when I was kind of coming out. Bisexual is already kind of a dirty word. Like people were skeptical about it. They basically thought, well, this is the term you use until you eventually come out as gay.
Hmm.
So there really it wasn't seen as its own thing. And then when AIDS hit, then it became even more darkly weighted, right? Because then you were the messengers, you were the people who were going to carry the virus from the gay community to the straight
Right,
community. So
right.
then it was even more of a bad word.
And there was so
And so,
much misinformation, especially
so
in the
much
Oh God,
beginning,
yeah.
that
misinformation.
there was no way for you to feel like you had any solid ground underneath you.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean it's so and again, the word queer did not I was not what
It
it
was a
is
pejorative.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was a pejorative term then. So you didn't have this inclusive, expansive term.
we
You
hadn't reclaimed it, is
Yeah,
what it boils
exactly.
down to.
Well, yeah, not during the AIDS pandemic. There's not going to be any reclaiming of a word like queer,
Mm-mm.
like so.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think to your original question though, I would just say, there's lots of memoirs and writing out now about marriage, divorce, and non-monogamy. I do hope that my memoir is representative of the messiness of the journey, but also that there's so much expansive possibility that love and imagination are so much stronger than the maps they gave us, right? Than the
Mm,
conventions we inherit that kind of weigh down on our ideas about how we have close relationships with others.
Love
yep.
it.
Yep.
Love it. All right. Are you ready for our get to know you questions?
Sure. Actually, let me. I got them. I got them. I put my answers on my phone. Let me pull it up here.
Someone did their homework.
I did. I did. I'm like such a good student that way. All right, I'm ready to go.
All
These are.
right. All right. In this year of diving deeper, can you name a movie that was better than the book?
I don't think anyone's going to disagree with me on this one. Call Me by Your Name.
Well, that's true. I
Hmm.
will give you that one.
I
Definitely.
mean, I defy anyone to disagree. I mean, if you've read the book and you see the movie, they're just. I mean,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
book is not as hot.
Yeah. Yeah. To put it mildly. Okay. Which fictional character would you most like to be friends with?
Okay, you might not know who this is, but there was a cowboy western that it was a book and a film that came out in the 50s. called Shame.
Oh
I
yeah.
remember.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mysterious, handsome cowboy who comes to town and befriends a little Wyoming family and becomes their kind of farmhand. And he has a mysterious past. And it was my father's favorite movie, and I was kind of like a mandatory conscript to watch it when I was growing up. But when you go back and read the book, it's one of the most homoerotic books you have ever read in your whole life.
Wow.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Homoerotic cowboys before Brokeback Mountain.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. What is the most fascinating fact that you know?
This I hesitate to mention because it might devastate you, but for Girl Scout Thin Mint cookies, the recommended serving size is 4. Just 4. They're about this big. So
Yeah, with
deal with that.
shrinkflation,
Deal
who
with
knows?
that
They
for the
might
rest.
be nuggets.
Yeah. Deal with that for the rest of the day. I mean, because
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
My brother just got hit up to buy Girl Scout cookies this week, so it's the
they're
season.
everywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're everywhere.
Okay. Well, what was your favorite subject in school?
Hands down, English.
Nice.
Yeah, I think all of us writers, it was kind of a thing.
Yeah, I actually, so I'm in my life, my working life that pays the bills, I'm a therapist, psychotherapist, and I have a sliding scale fee, and I have a special discount for the middle school teachers because
There you go.
because they're
There you
saving
go.
the world. And if you're an English teacher, you don't have to pay anything.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I have to pay a little bit, but
I was like, oh, okay, you want to let that one out?
yeah.
You might want to call that cat back in the bag.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a generous discount because they do God's work.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. All right.
Yeah.
Before making a telephone call, do you rehearse what you're going to say?
I don't make telephone calls.
Oh, okay.
Nice.
So, if you can text, it's just so. I mean, writers, we love to just text. You have the perfectly formed sentences, and your punctuation.
Well,
is
we're about the only
correct,
ones who actually text with real words and real punctuation.
It's so beautiful. We're keeping something beautiful alive.
Okay. What current event or causes are you deeply passionate about?
I am mortified about the way the world is targeting the trans community
Mm,
and especially trans kids.
mm,
And I am the therapist who has seen the suicide notes in
mm.
the aftermath of tragedies. And so the idea that the world is picking on these kids is a tragedy and we should all be speaking up that they should be left alone.
Yep, to the least amongst us. And what kills me is that it's the tiniest fragment of a
Yes,
population.
such a ridiculous
It's like, get over
distraction.
yourselves. You're
Yeah.
not that important to be harassing these kids.
Yes.
All right. If you could visit anywhere in the world, where would that be?
I'm a huge fan of the city Vienna.
Mm,
I spent a month there last year. I worked from Vienna for a month. And I'm thinking about doing it again this year. Because therapists, we can see our clients virtually. And so and it's just a really beautiful, easy city to live in. There's no gun violence. Crime rate's really low. There's music everywhere.
for me, it's Copenhagen. I love
Yeah.
Denmark.
I see that.
I love Denmark. Only place
Yeah.
I cried when I left. Okay. Who, if anyone, was your first celebrity crush?
I'm only going to share this if you promise not to judge me. And so my my celebrity crush would be Mr. Rogers.
Hold on, let me get my tea.
Uh-huh. Yeah. No, it would be Mr. Rogers.
Really?
Because he was like, he got me through some rough periods, and when I was a middle schooler, I babysat a kid who lived in our apartment building after school, and the kid always wanted to watch Mr. Rogers, and so I watched Mr. Rogers with him. But I
Nice.
honestly got more out of watching Mr. Rogers when I was 13 and 14, because he just was like such a good guy.
Hmm.
He was like the kind, benevolent father.
He was
that
an
everyone
ally when
wanted.
it was not cool to be an ally.
He
Right.
was. He
Yep.
was. Yeah. I mean, how could you not see the sexiness in that?
Right, right, exactly. Okay, finally, what's your personal favorite recipe that you make, and are you willing to share it with us?
I am. So I'm a big fan of tray bakes, where all the food of your meal, you just heap it onto one oiled baking sheet and you put it in the oven at like 700 degrees or whatever, and
Right.
blast it.
You put it near the sun.
Yeah, and then you take it out and it's just done, and it's completely done, and it's there, charred vegetables and meat, and you just, and it, yeah, it's just really easy. Anything that takes less than 10 minutes to make is
Well, there you go.
is a
There you
gift.
go.
Love it.
All right. Well, you made it through the list. Bravo.
So, all right, thanks. Those are good questions.
So, what are you working on next? Will you be doing book events? Are you working on a next book? What's going on?
I do have book events, and those are really fun. Stuff like this is really fun because, like, you know, you spend like years of misery writing the thing, and then it's finally done, and you get to like share your excitement about it. So that's
Yep.
really fun. I'm writing another book, which is a blend of memoir and historical fiction, and the historical fiction part takes place in Vienna, because the interesting thing about Vienna too is that, like, my field, psychotherapy, the talking cure, started right before the period of the two world wars. So it evolved during this extremely violent and uncertain time in the world. Actually, not unlike what we're in there right now, right? And so it's endlessly fascinating to me that during this dark, violent period where people were being targeted and killed, that this healing, this mode of healing developed, right? And became sort of my kind of legacy as a psychotherapist. So I'm sort of studying and researching the lives of some of the early analysts who developed the field, and just the ways in which they developed against this backdrop of violence and chaos and uncertainty.
Nice. Do you have and we're not going to hold you to it, but do you have a projected release date for that?
You know, the reason I'm talking about it with people is I'm hoping that someone will call me and say, "Hey, that book sounds
fabulous."
Sounds fabulous." Yeah.
Awesome. All right. All right. Where is the best place for people to follow you and watch for announcements that that book got picked up and will be published?
The book that's currently out there that is published, you mean?
Both. That one
Okay.
and
So the main hub would be on my website is Wayne Scott Writes. So you can find all my stuff there. The press, the amazing small independent publisher that published the maps they gave us, is Black Lawrence Press. They are wonderful, and people should always support the small press before they support the big behemoths that are also going to make money off of this thing. So if you can order from Black Lawrence Press, or alternately, ask your local little bookshops to, if they don't have it, to get it, order it through them, because they're also the people we want to support in this economy.
Yep. And pro tip, if you ask a bookstore to order a book for you, it is in their system forever.
Yes. Awesome
Perfect.
advice.
All right. Any final words of wisdom?
No, I'm glad that you all are, shows like this, right, I think are really gonna are holding a space, an important space of affirmation during a time when so many people are lining up,
especially in the current climate.
Yeah. And one of the beauties, the incredible beauties of the fact that this is going to be accessible through the internet, is in all those deep red pockets of the world where it's unacceptable to be who you are. People could find podcasts like this and feel better about themselves.
Well,
so
we're trying. We we're holding up the walls with our foot and some bubble gum and tinfoil, but we're trying.
You go.
I mean, even 10 years ago, before this recent dark turn, one of our stated goals for this show was to create an archive of all of the queer voices that we could find that would exist forever.
Yeah, I mean, people, you're honoring a stream of literature that has saved lives, right? And it's been around forever, and it's always at risk of going away, of being banned, being forgotten. I mean, how many queer authors over the time their books have gone out of print, or they've been banned, or they've been lost.
Themselves, yeah.
There are some publishers who literally go out and try to find those manuscripts that have long been abandoned, that were published before, but then went out of print, and they've tried finding them and finding who actually owns the rights to them to republish them and get them back into circulation again. So there are publishers out there working on it, but you're right. It's an important part. It's almost like film preservation. We have to do queer preservation and keep our voices heard.
Yep.
Especially
Yep.
now.
And I think too, remembering our history enables us to envision our future. Like I could not have written this memoir if it hadn't been for the queer literary forebears who I read and had access to, who opened my mind that it was okay to live certain ways in the world.
Yeah.
I'm
that way. My husband introduced me to Gore Vidal, and that's that's been
exactly
one of
like
my passions. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, we'd like to extend a huge thank you to Wayne Scott for being with us today.
You.
Wayne, thank you. We at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. So if you enjoy learning about new artists or hearing our thoughts on entertainment media, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. This show was produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.roguepodcast.com. Go to YouTube, follow us there. There's way more for you out there than there is in just the podcast stream. So please follow us there as well. Tune in next week for your queer media fix.
Bye now.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.